Hey everyone, what's going on? So the Dolphins lost, and big whoop. I wasn't really completely sold on it like I mentioned in my videos. You just kind of make a pick because there's so many people who expect you to make a pick and figure it out. And what I've always been trying to do is show that these games are scripted, and it's very obvious that they are. But picking the winner sometimes is just, in how many years I've been doing it for a couple years, sometimes you're just completely off, even if it is scripted. For example, Alabama last night, they had 31 points, Alabama equals 31, and they didn't win. I haven't figured out how exactly gematria fits with what team is winning. And the reason is a lot of the times when I have been correct, there's themes that go along with the gematria. So you have to figure out what theme they are actually using and how the gematria plays into that, at least from my experience. And that's basically what I was doing with the Super Bowl, was guessing some themes, possibly the beginning and the end, maybe some type of flipping script, which I still think there's something going on with that. We even got an article today on CNN about flip or flop stars moved to divorce. It's just weird that they would even have an article in regards to flipping or flip. And all of the information that I've presented in all of my other videos in regards to the Miami Dolphins, you can't really disregard a whole lot of it. It's still all interrelated and it's still connected. I even talked about how in the Alton Sterling stuff, they wore the blue, the turquoise, so the aqua shirt, and the Miami Dolphins are aqua. They also did the same thing with Philando Castile. And then literally, they come out and say that the shooter in Fort Lauderdale was wearing this blue shirt. And they make it very clear that he was wearing a blue shirt. And I mean, this whole shooting was all about the color blue. The color that I had mentioned. You got this guy right here, the front and center dead guy, wearing the blue striped shirt. There's another dead person over here wearing an aqua shirt. And if you go to CNN to look at some of these pictures, they got a bunch of cops wearing blue jeans. This guy, all decked out for the alien invasion. And he's wearing a blue shirt with blue jeans. Here's another blue jean guy with the blue suitcase over here. Blue jeans yet again, the blue sign in the background. This is the lady from Council Bluffs. And look, she's even wearing a blue shirt. Then you got this guy who was laughing like crazy or whatever, if you zoom in on it. Of course, wearing a blue shirt. This guy's just chilling like no big deal. There's some blue down here. And then you got, that guy seriously looks like John Cena. Who knows? Possibly, it's a pretty distorted picture there. But it just looks like John Cena to me. And John Cena actually came up again with the Orlando cop who supposedly just got killed, yesterday? They kept showing that kid on the Twitter wearing the John Cena shirt. So, who knows? Just pointing it out. Even, I don't know if he's in any of the pictures. Possibly he's that guy in the first picture I showed. But the guy from Council Bluffs that I was talking about, it even says on one of the articles that she described him, and he saw a white-haired guy in a blue shirt. It's the color blue like crazy in the story, something that I've mentioned a whole lot. And all the stuff in regards to my uncle, I talked a lot about how it connected to the Flintstones. And interesting, I realized that if you just write Flintstones in gematria, it equals 153, just like Jarvis Landry, just like Ryan Tannehill. My uncle turned 63 years old on the same day that Sam Foltz died, and how it's all super connected. 63 equals 153, and I talked about how Sam Foltz's death, Mike Sadler's death, and then Colby Delahousse, the LSU player, it was all of them games were super synced up to the number 63. A ton of 63 in the Wisconsin, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Wisconsin, LSU game. So, just pretty interesting. it's definitely still all interrelated. I just haven't figured out the exact point of the script, you know? Even Nebraska, Clemson just won with 35 points, and they won for the first time in 35 years, and the last time that they won was in 1981 when they beat Nebraska in Miami in the Orange Bowl. But anyway, in this video, I'm just going to talk about, I might show the Clemson-Alabama stuff that I noticed. I got another copyright claim on an old video from 2014. I'm just going to make a whole separate video on this. It's about the death of Mitch Hedberg, probably my favorite comedian. And I figured out sort of what they're doing with it. I don't know exactly what it means, just like what I'm saying and all this other stuff. But there's some very funny stuff that actually goes with it. And, a lot of 46 and 115 in this copyright claim that they want me to see. Well, anyway, let's move on. Let's move back to this game here. And you know what else? Before I move on, in regards to themes, so when the Royals won the World Series that I figured out about a month before, I had said I thought it was going to be the Mets and the Yankees because of the movie Trainwreck, and there was a big deal about they all loved the New York Mets and whatnot, and they hated the Yankees. And the Mets ended up making the World Series, and then in the beginning of October, I changed my mind in regards to the Kansas City Royals because the big deal that in 2015 was that Pope Francis was coming to the United States, and on 6/6 of 2015, 1 + 5 = 6, a lot like 666, a guy dressed up like Pope Francis caught a home run ball of Salvador Perez. So I changed my mind to the Kansas City Royals. I think I even talked about the Cubs as well, possibly the Cubs in regards to I Pet Goat and whatnot, which I also did mention how it would be synced up to 2016 as well. But in the beginning of October, the team that I was pretty sure was going to win was the Kansas City Royals, and they were even synced up to Pope Francis because in Gematria, if you write out Kansas City, it equals 122, just like Pope Francis. The Golden State Warriors had just won the NBA Finals that year. Golden State also equaled 122. And their win was synced up to the Philadelphia Trainwreck that happened at 9:23 p.m. Golden State originally from Philadelphia. The movie Trainwreck with LeBron James in it. It starts when Amy Schumer's character is 9 years old. The rest of the movie takes place 23 years later. LeBron James in Jewish Gematria equals 923. And then Pope Francis came to the United States on his 923rd day as being the Pope. He went to the White House at 9:23 a.m. on 9/23, September 23rd. We were also in the 239th year of the United States, which, 9/23, September 23rd could even be written 23/9. So I knew there was a big deal in regards to Pope Francis, and when Golden State won, and then I realized that that guy caught the ball and Kansas City was connected to the Pope, I was pretty sure they were going to win. Even in Game 1 of the World Series, the power went out at 9:19 p.m., and it came back on at 9:23. It was just before the bottom of the fourth where the Royals were batting. And then the Royals went on to win the game, went on to win the World Series. I also have been following a royal family theme since pretty much the beginning of the channel. And in Gematria, Queen Elizabeth II equals 168, just like New York Mets, who the Kansas City Royals beat, and also Cleveland Cavaliers, who Golden State beat that year, equals 168. Also, Kansas City Royals in Gematria equals 212, just like Prince Charles of Wales. Kansas City Royals, the small way, equals 59, just like Pope Francis. And Back to the Future also equaled 59. And remember, in Back to the Future 3, when the movie comes to an end, it's in 1985 on October 27th, which syncs up to Philadelphia. That's the day that Philadelphia, was founded. But in 1985, that was also the same day the Kansas City Royals had last won the World Series. And I was pretty sure of that the year 1985 would be synced up to the Super Bowl as well. And the college championship just by the themes. The gematria has synced up as well. Once you figured out what the actual, some of the themes they were using, if you figured the themes out, the gematria fit perfect, you know? And, you know, then we got Clemson losing to Alabama with a total score of 85. There's a bunch of other stuff in that national championship with 85. The quarterback wearing the wristband with 85. The Super Bowl was all about the 85 Bears, just like I had talked about, and I believe like sometime in November, talked about how it's coded to the 85 Bears. It obviously wasn't going to be the Bears. There was a whole bunch of stuff in regards to the Chiefs and how they synced up to the 85 Bears. But I noticed a lot of teams had connections to the 85 Bears. But so that's why it was a little bit confusing. You had to use the gematria along with the theme to figure out it was going to be the Panthers and the Broncos. And then later that year, we got Villanova, who beat North Carolina for the first time since 1985. And they beat North Carolina, and then Carolina Panthers lost. And then Clemson, who was from South Carolina, lost. And then we had the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland, a Cavalier, is a follower of King Charles during the English Civil War. Then we had Coastal Carolina win the College World Series, all in this year span. And the Carolinas are named in honor of King Charles, the king during the English Civil War. And if Prince Charles becomes the king, he'll become King Charles III. So these two major themes were interrelated, and if you figured that out, you could follow a lot more of what is going on. And a lot to do with gematria too. People haven't been studying it that long. There's not that many sports championships in the past 3 years or whatever that people have even been using it to really follow the news and follow other things and figure out how it syncs up, you know? It's going to take more time to perfect the system, and that's why I don't like making picks. I like presenting the information. So, whatever. If I say that I think a team's going to win, don't hold that to me ever. Just listen to what I am presenting. And, you know, even if I'm right, I'm right. It's not like I'm going to go on here and say, oh, yeah, just seriously sit here and just gloat about it nonstop, make a ton of videos. Who cares? I've got a bunch of stuff right. I've got a bunch of stuff wrong. And when I get something wrong, eventually other things arise and you figure out why you got it wrong. You figure out what the point was. So let's look at the Dolphins game then. Sorry for rambling, but of course my internet goes out for the... Seriously, look at this. I just want to show people this. My internet company shut me off for not paying the bill like for 1 month. But all summer, I'm about to turn on my hotspot on my phone. I don't know if you can see that. Limited, no internet access. All summer, my internet did this for like a good 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours or something like that. Every single day, my internet didn't work. And, you know, I called them all the time, and they could never figure out what the problem was. I still had to pay the bill, though. Still had to pay the $84, whatever it was, you know, and then I don't pay the bill for 1 month and they shut it off. That's how this world works, you know. I'm not even going to go on this rant. All right, so got my hotspot going. You know, I'm just so tired of cops, especially when you live in a really small town and it's just the most ridiculous stuff that happens. You wouldn't understand it if you didn't live in a town of 1,000 people. Just some ridiculous stuff. I got 2 tickets in the mail that went to my parents' house, which makes no sense whatsoever, considering my address at the courthouse isn't at my parents' house. I even went and renewed my license in October, and they never sent it to me until almost Christmas. My girlfriend got hers in the beginning of November. I didn't get mine until almost Christmas, so if I would have got pulled over, I could have got a driving without a license ticket. I guarantee the cops are dicks enough around here to do it too. And then, of course, you know, you can get out of it by getting a lawyer and paying a bunch of money, and then you still got to pay the court costs and everything else, so you don't ever win. It's just a joke. But whatever. Maybe sometime I'll just make a video with all the times I've been pulled over. It's been like 3 billion times. Actually, I want to share one example. My girlfriend was working a half hour away from where we lived. We only had one car at the time. It was in Mo Valley, Iowa. We lived in Woodbine. And whatever. I used to have to go to work, which I was a block away from my work or whatever. But when I got off work, I used to have to drive and pick her up and bring her home or whatever. And I got pulled over for having no muffler. And the guy made me get out of the car and put my hands on the front of the car while he searched the car for drugs and weapons and bombs or whatever he was searching for, who knows. And while I'm standing there, a big group of Harley drivers drive by, just, you know what I mean, way louder than my car, while he's writing me up this ticket and whatever, searching my car. It's such a joke, you know? And the town that I live in now, the town that I've pretty much grew up in, I lived a few other places, like I've said. I can think of 8 cops who live here. We have a town of 1,000 people. It's mostly people who are like in their 60 or older, and I can think of 8 cops who live in this town. What? I don't feel any safer by having 8 cops in this town. In fact, I actually feel more threatened. So, you know, whatever. Yeah, it's done and over. I've been in a bad mood because of that. I'm trying not to be, I'm really trying not to be, but I don't have $500. Or it's more than $500 with the two combined. So whatever. Anyway, in this Dolphins game then, in regards to the coding, if you notice, the Miami Dolphins had 12 points. I find it interesting that the Steelers had 30 points, and the last time these two teams played each other, the Dolphins won with 30 points. But the Dolphins lost they scored 12 points, and they also lost by 18 points. And this game was on 1/8, and they lost by 18 points. If you write out 18 in gematria, it equals 46. The date numerology equaled 46. 1 plus 8 plus 20 plus 17 equals 46. Also, them scoring 12 points is super fitting for Miami, or the Miami Dolphins, because 12 equals 42 like Freemason. And if you write out 42, it equals 142. Just like if you write out Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins equals 142. The total score, 30 plus 12, 42. A good majority of the game, they were even down by 17 points. And it was also 17 degrees out. And if you go back and watch my really long videos in regards to Dolphins, a big portion of them was about the number 13 and 17. Dan Marino wore number 13. Ryan Tannehill wore number 17. Tannehill got hurt on the 13th game of the season. Dan Marino played for 17 seasons. His last game will, in 4 days on the 15th, it will be the 17th anniversary of him playing his final game for 17 seasons. In the game, too, Matt Moore got hit in the chin, but it looked like he got hit real bad and blah, blah, blah. And they had to put in TJ Yates for one play. And this guy just super duper coded up to all the things I've talked about. And if it wasn't completely opposite of everything I've thought in regards to the NBA or the NFL recently, I would have thought that this would be a really good sign for the Miami Dolphins. And it's just worked out completely opposite of everything that I have thought. That's why I think it's funny when I was talking about the flipper thing, because it seems like things that I have followed in regards to certain scripts previously that I had talked about, it all synced up the exact same way that I'm looking at it this time, and this time it's completely opposite, you know? So what I mean is, so they put this guy in, and he was born in Indianapolis, which I talked about, the Colts being super coded to Miami, the Colts and the Cowboys and whatnot. So he's born in Indianapolis, where the Colts play. He's 29 years old. Football equals 29. He was also the 152nd pick in the draft. Super Bowl LI equals 152. He even played for the Houston Texans on 2 different times, 2 different occasions. And the Houston's where the Super Bowl's being played. And he even is wearing number 16 for the Dolphins. And think about the Fort Lauderdale shooting that happened on 1/6. Fort Lauderdale equals 61. And 1/6 could even be written as 6/1. But it happened on 1/6, 16 miles away from where the Dolphins play. We even had the death of Jose Fernandez, the Miami Marlin, who wore number 16. So, if this would have happened in any other year, it seems that this would have been a good thing. This guy would have came in, had a really good game, brought him to the Super Bowl. This year, it seems that there's so many connections to the Super Bowl, or at least, I don't know how to read it or something. It's weird. It's opposite of what I've noticed for the other championships that I have followed for the last couple of years. So just keep that in mind, I guess. That's all I'm saying. I really don't think that they flipped the script. I still think that flipping the script is part of the script. Almost like they knew a lot of people are going to be decoding stuff at this point in time, and they changed it. They changed it from the way it was the previous couple years and whatnot. And I think it's been planned for way before this. I don't think it would just happen all of a sudden because people were betting on the Colts. I think that these people are crazy. I think it's like 1984. It truly is, whether you want to believe it or not. The copyright claim that I got with the Mitch Hedberg, I mean, there's no way. I feel like we're living in 1984 with the thought police, And all of these stories are interrelated, and I guarantee you what I was talking about with the Dolphins will somehow play into whoever's in the Super Bowl. And, I mean, it'll be a factor in there, I guarantee it. It's just that I'm not seeing it because I'm getting confused by looking. I'm just getting super confused, I guess. It's not the same way that it has been for the other championships that I have followed and covered. That being said, though, in regards to the Steelers, the first touchdown that the Steelers scored was a 50-yard pass. It was Roethlisberger to Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown, of course, born in Miami, Florida. Interesting, too, I guess. He wears number 84, and the last time they played was 84 days ago. Also 12 weeks, and then the Dolphins lose with 12 points. But Ben Roethlisberger also played college at Miami, Ohio. Just interesting, a Miami connection. Miami for Antonio Brown. The Giants even lost to the Packers, and the big deal about the Giants was the wide receivers went and celebrated in Miami. So, just interesting. Whatever is connected to Miami obviously wasn't good for this week or whatever, but the score of the Packers and the Giants game also totaled 51 points, right? We're going to the Super Bowl 51, and the Packers won by 25 points, and the Super Bowl's played on 2/5. Green Bay also had 25 rushes and 25 completed passes. Well, I don't know. Think about that in regards to all the stuff I'm saying. It seems to be really connected. Possibly it's just completely opposite, and it's just faking me out by noticing that. Possibly they'd know that you're going to notice it. Who knows? Just trying to figure it all out. I also, before this game, I mentioned Geronimo Allison and a whole bunch of stuff in regards to the Native American theme and Colin Kaepernick. The game that Colin Kaepernick first knelt in was against the Packers, and Geronimo Allison was the leading receiver. And he's connected to Iowa Western Community College, which is in Council Bluffs. It's connected to the Fort Lauderdale shooting. A whole lot of stuff I mentioned with Geronimo Allison. What's interesting is this game was on 1/8, and when Jordy Nelson got hurt, the announcer said that Geronimo Allison came in the game for him or whatever. So maybe he played before that in the game. I'm not sure. They made it sound like he was replacing Jordy Nelson in the game. Allison wears number 81. He caught one pass for 8 yards on 1-8. His birthday on the 18th day of the year. Also, that means that his birthday is 18 days before Super Bowl 51. And the first regular season game that he played in, he played in the preseason games, then he never played in an actual NFL game until October 30th against Atlanta, which, if you go from October 30th to his birthday, a span of 81 days. So he plays in his first NFL game 81 days before his birthday. He wears number 81. In this game against the Giants, he caught one pass for 8 yards on 1-8. The reflection, born on the 18th day of the year. Jordy Nelson, I don't know if I put the stats in here. Yeah. He was 1 for 13. And then Allison was 1 of 8. And we've talked a whole lot about the 318, 138, tons of stuff, whatever. So just interesting, 13 and 8, the numbers that I've talked about. Just over and over and over. 318, 138, 813. So once again, even if I did get the pick right, look how scripted it truly is. Geronimo Allison, all the 81 and 18 stuff around him. Last year in the Super Bowl, if you recall, it was Peyton Manning's 18th season. He wore number 18, and the first play of the Super Bowl was an 18-yard pass to number 81. Also, in regards to Geronimo, I also mentioned the Native American Geronimo and how George Bush's grandpa, Prescott Bush, and the Skull and Bones members supposedly stole his skull and bones or whatever. And the number for Skull and Bones is 322, but as a date, 3/22, March 22nd, that's the 81st day of the year. So interesting how Geronimo even connects, the Native American even connects the Skull and Bones of the 81. Jordy Nelson even got hurt when the clock was at 11:08, a lot like 118. And, death equals 118. But also, that is Geronimo Allison's birthday, 11/8 or 1/18. It also reminds me of the election too. 11/8 was the day that the election happened, and 11/8 is the day that leaves 53 days in the year. Super Bowl LI equals 53 the small way. Talked about Geronimo Allison going to Iowa Western Community College. Iowa Western has identical gematria to Super Bowl LI. Iowa Western's in Council Bluffs. Council Bluffs equals 53. Just in some weird way, possibly all the Miami coding truly was for this guy and how it syncs up to the Packers and whatnot. I mean, just some crazy weird stuff. We'll see. The game that I even first started mentioning Geronimo Allison in regards to the Nebraska Cornhuskers, he got the game-winning pass. He had 91 yards. And 91 all year last year was a big elimination number in Nebraska games. It was a big elimination number in a ton of other things. Even the Miami Hurricanes were having a horrible season, and then can't remember who they were playing. I think it maybe Duke, and they won the game on the 91-yard return or something. It worked in Miami's favor, which is kind of weird. But just interesting, he got the game-winning pass. The last time that I talked about this guy, or when I began talking about him, was 1 year, 4 months, 2 days before the Super Bowl 51 this year. And of course, Miami Dolphins equal 142. 491 is the 94th prime number. Cleveland Indians equal 94. They had 94 regular season wins. Think about Geronimo connecting to the Native American theme. 94 was also the year that Michael Jordan played baseball under coach Terry Francona, who coaches the Cleveland Indians now. Michael Jordan's even 53 years old. Geronimo, the Native American, He died exactly 54 years before Michael Jordan was born on 2/17/1963. And, think about 2/17. It's a number I've mentioned a whole lot. It's the 48th day of the year. Donald Trump equals 40. 217 in Gematria equals 88. Trump equals 88 in Gematria. Obama's birthday this year was on the 217th day of the year. The NBA All-Star Week begins on 2/17. Remember how they moved it out of North Carolina because of the bathroom law and whatnot? And that was synced up to whatever. Not even going to go into it, but they let us know they were moving it on July 21st, 21/7, and then the All-Star Week begins on 2/17. A whole bunch of stuff. So, just interesting. Even this year is 2017, which in numerology you don't use the 0. It looks a lot like 217. And just think about that in regards to the college national championship last night, when the big logo was the 2 with the football that looked like the 2 crescent moons. And then 1-7, so you could really just make out 2-1-7. They totally want you to see it, there's going to be a lot of stuff in regards to this year, I'm assuming. I also, in my research, I noticed that the Packers were supposed to play a preseason game against the Colts, but it got canceled. And then the Kaepernick kneeling game was against the Packers. And Geronimo Allison was the lead receiver of that game, but he even had a catch for 51 yards. Preseason equals 112, like Houston. Super Bowl 51. Geronimo Allison in Jewish gematria equals 501. You take out the 0, a lot like 51. Also, in regards to all the 9/11 symbolism, Geronimo was the original name for the operation that supposedly killed Osama bin Laden. It was Operation Neptune Spear, but also called Geronimo. Geronimo was what they called Osama bin Laden in that, and there was a big controversy, whatever. But think about that, Operation Neptune Spear. I talked about how Super Bowl 51 seems to be super synced up to Super Bowl 48 when the Seahawks played the Patriots. It was all about Neptune symbolism. There was a lot of trident stuff. That was the Maserati commercial, whatever. First, I can't even remember what it was. Now we strike or whatever. So, who knows? I thought maybe it was the opposite stuff. I was talking about the Seahawks with the 10-12 stuff. They beat the Dolphins 10-12 on the first game of the season. Talked about how it sank up to Houston winning their division with a score of 10-12, and all the Dan Marino stuff goes back to 10-12. Maybe it's for the Seahawks. Maybe it is going to be a rematch of the Seahawks and the Patriots or something stupid like that. Especially in regards to Neptune Spear and Osama bin Laden. If you remember, too, we found out that Osama bin Laden died on May 1st, 5/1, even though it actually happened on 5/2. But because of the time change, the first articles that were coming out about it were on 5/1, a lot like Super Bowl 51. I also looked up this movie called Geronimo from 1962, which, interesting, it even came out on May 1st, 5/1 of 1962. The guy who plays Geronimo in the movie is Chuck Connors. And Chuck Connors, I just talked about how he was the dad on the movie Flipper. Syncing up to the Miami Dolphins. Trying to think of what it was. His birthday or his death day. He died 152 days before or after his birthday. I can't remember what it was, but Super Bowl LI equals 152. There was some other interesting connections. He was the guy who broke the backboard or whatever, the first guy to break the backboard in basketball, and he played Major League Baseball. I think his last game was on 5/1 or something like that. I'd have to go back and look, but I know I talked about this guy in regards to the movie Flipper, and he also played Geronimo. The odds. The game where the Packers played the 49ers and Kaepernick didn't stand, that was on the 1-year anniversary of the the Bridgewater shooting, the Monetta, Virginia shooting, the Bridgewater shooting. And think about that in regards to Teddy Bridgewater being injured and whatnot. The main girl in the story was Allison Parker, and the shooter was Vester Flanagan. He's from San Francisco. His name equals 145 in gematria. He was also born on 10/8. Chicago, Illinois equals 145. The Cubs stuff was all synced up to 108. The Great Chicago Fire even 145 years ago on 10/8. If you write out 81 like Geronimo Allison's number, it equals 108. Vester Flanagan's radio or TV name, though, was Bryce Williams. That equals 151. Talked about all the Jesus Christ symbolism in regards to the Cowboys. Jesus Christ equals 151. Dallas Cowboys equals 151. And the Packers advance to play the Cowboys on January 15th, which can even be written as 15/1, a lot like 151, like Dallas Cowboys. And you see how it's super coded? It doesn't necessarily mean the Cowboys are going to win, though, just like how Alabama equals 13 and 31, and they lost with 31 points. Alabama's quarterback was even 13 of 31 passing for 131 yards, a lot like 13 and 31. I mean, they were super synced up to their numbers, but they still lost. So, who knows? That's why doing this, it's obvious that it's going on. It's just figuring out what number is good at what certain time or what number is bad, you know? And all the stuff syncs up to other events in the media and everything else, all the hoaxes, possibly some of the real things that they're just using the stories for the numbers or whatever, you know? You know, what is going on here? My trackpad is horrible. Anyway, in regards to Jesus, so Dallas Cowboys equal 151, Jesus Christ equals 151. They're playing the Packers on 15/1. Christ in gematria equals 77. Green Bay Packers equals 77. I've talked about all the 318 stuff as well with the Miami Dolphins, and 318 is the 77th day of the year. And also, there was a lot of Deflategate stuff that kept coming up in regards to them showing the Colts a lot. And in the year of Deflategate, remember Dez Bryant got screwed over against the Packers. So, who knows? I don't know who it's for, to tell you the truth, but it's definitely coded and whatever. Anyway, I'm just going to go through the Clemson-Alabama game real quick, just because this video is already super long. But I mean, it's just so obvious. I never even made a guess at this one. I just wasn't even paying that much attention. But then after you watch it, you're like, it's just so stupid, you know? And if you would have tried to guess it on this, you might have got it right or you might have got it wrong. So anyway, Clemson equals 35, or Clemson won with 35. Alabama lost with 31 points. Alabama equals 31. In gematria, like I just said, their quarterback 13 of 31 for 131 yards. Alabama equals 13 and 31. Clemson even won the game because number 13 caught the game-winning pass. You know, Alabama equals 13. They lose with 31 points. It's just hilarious. And then, like I said, I noticed that the last time they won, so Clemson had 35 points. The last time they won was 35 years ago against none other than the Nebraska Cornhuskers in the Orange Bowl that was played in Miami. Miami equals 27. Clemson equals 27. The date numerology of yesterday, 1 plus 10 plus 17. Or actually 1 plus 9 plus 17. 27. So the date numerology, 27. Miami equals 27. Clemson equals 27. It's 27 days before the Super Bowl. It's all interrelated. Even Clemson equals 81, the big way, and the last time they won was in the year 81. Just like how Nebraska equals 71 and they won their first championship in 1971. It's just ridiculous. Tom Brady equals 98, became the starter in the year 98. Michigan Wolverines equal 98. Jim Harbaugh equals 98. Snickers equals 98. Brady Bunch equals 98. Lupercalia equals 98. Festival where they celebrate sacrifice the wolf. How do people not see that that's scripted? Even if you get it wrong, it's still scripted. It's just so annoying that people come on here and troll and say, well, you said this or that. No, I'm just showing the scripting. I don't exactly know how it all fits, but it is so totally scripted. It's just so obvious. People just don't want to see it, I guess. Even without numbers, you don't even need numbers to see how scripted it truly is. Like in the Dolphins game, when Lippett jumped over on the field goal and he got an offsides. I mean, nobody does that in the NFL. No way. No way. It's like they look like a junior high team all of a sudden. You know, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Or the excuse that it was so cold in Miami or in Pittsburgh, and that's why the Dolphins were doing bad because they're not used to the cold. Then how do the Denver Broncos not win every single time at home? People, well, they're not used to the air there. You know, how do they not win every single time? It's just the stupidest excuse of all time. None of that makes any sense, but people eat it up, you know? Anyway, I also noticed that Clemson Tigers equals 159 in gematria. And some possible things that it could be. I talked a lot about Janet Reno and the death of her in Miami was super synced up to 159. Dan Marino's birthday, 15/9. Will Smith's birthday, 15/9. But if you write out Patrick Tillman, it equals 159. And the reason that stuck out was because Clemson equals 81, and the last time they won was the year 81. Pat Tillman died 81 days after the Patriots won the Super Bowl 38. And then Cardinals even equal 81, the team that he was known for playing for. So who knows? Possibly it is all for the stupid Patriots. I say that like I care, and it doesn't really matter to me who wins, but you know, because once you see all the scripting, you just don't care. But it just gets really boring and old, always seeing the Patriots in there. And I mean, how much more can they tell you that the Patriots are cheaters and everything else? How much more can they do that? You know, oh, they're looking at the playbooks, and now then Tom Brady's deflating the balls and whatnot. And then people still love the Patriots, or, you know, they still want to see them in the Super Bowl just because they think it's going to be a good Super Bowl and everything else. It's just such a joke. And I did see an article on ESPN this year about root for the overdogs, and they had the Cowboys and the Patriots on there. And last year was all about the year of the underdog and whatnot. So I think I mentioned that previously. So who knows? We'll see how it all plays out. I'm not going to make any more predictions. I'm just going to follow it and follow some of the coding and talk about things that I've noticed. And we'll see how it all plays out, and then I'll try to piece it all together at the end, you know? I don't know if I mentioned this, but Teddy Bridgewater also injured 159 days before Super Bowl 51. I mentioned the logo before. It looks like a 217 and like two crescent moons. I talked a lot about a moon theme as well. I also showed in this post that there was a time when they set Clemson's clock back, or they set the clock back to 9:23 when Clemson had the ball. And for the last 2 years, I've noticed any team synced up to 9:23, not always if their name equals 923. LeBron James is the only person I know that equals 923. But in games and whatnot, if you see the 923 associated with a team, they end up winning. And, you know, I talked about the Royals earlier, and last year The Cavaliers were synced up to 923, and the year before, the Warriors were synced up to 923. In the Michigan-Ohio State game, they showed J.T. Barrett was 9 of 23, and then Ohio State went on to win the game. I also pointed out these NBA games that my friend asked me to look into. So anyway, he asked me to look into this game here, and it was like, I had like a half hour, and I just texted back and I said, you know what? I think the Mavericks, it's looking better for the Mavericks only because of this theory that I have in regards to 9-23, because the Mavericks were 9-23 going into this game, and you know, I don't know. He thought the Lakers were going to win. I said, I don't know. I'm not for sure, but I told him the theory about 9-23. The Mavericks ended up winning, becoming 10-23. Interesting, the Mavericks scored 101 points. Mavericks and Gematria equals 101. And also, this week or this day, the only teams in the NBA that had a record of 9-23 were the Mavericks and the Phoenix Suns. And the Phoenix Suns also won this game, and they beat Toronto. And if Toronto would have won, they would have became 23-9. But instead, the 9-23 team beat them. So once again, proving my theory of 9-23 being good for teams. So there's been other examples, but, you know, just interesting. And Toronto scored 91 points. Phoenix and Gematria equals 91. Both of the total scores were 190 as well. And I don't have a clue what that means, but how interesting. They're both connected to 9-23, and they both total scored of 190 points. So, who knows? Just pointed it out. The theory that I have been following for a while seems to keep happening. So, possibly it's wrong. Possibly it's some weird thing, just like I'm talking about with the other sports things. You follow it for a while, and then all of a sudden, it's flipped for some reason. But as of right now, it seems like if you see 9 of 23 in a team, I would put my money on it. But, you know, whatever. I don't have any money to even put on, so. But just saying, seems like a good thing. I am done. I've been rambling. I'm going to make my video about the Mitch Hedberg real quick, and then I'm going to go to bed because I got to work in the morning. Peace.